One of the really, really big difficulties for parents of autistic kids, whether you're autistic or not really, is actually fascinatingly linked to one of the biggest issues that autistic people generally face. So I'm going to start with that. One of the biggest problems that autistic people generally face is not meeting society's expectations. And that's across pretty much everything, from the way we communicate, the way we move, the way we go about our lives. We don't match up to what the majority of society expects us to do. Quick proviso here, that does vary by culture, geographic culture. But generally speaking, autistic people all over the world tend to feel that they are not meeting the expectations of those around them. So, for example, when I struggle to make small talk, when I don't look somebody in the eye, when I talk for a little bit too long about something that isn't on the list of things we are allowed to talk about, then I'm not meeting expectations, and I therefore cause a few issues. People don't like it, people get impatient, grouchy, fearful, whatever. It causes difficulty. And being a parent to autistic children has that as a core problem too. And what I mean by that is parenting an autistic child in a way that actually works for that child, because the child is different in that autistic way, means that you're going to be parenting in a way that is deemed unacceptable or not matching society's expectations of parenting. Because you see, as I've learned since becoming a parent 11 years ago, there are some incredibly strict and strong assumptions made about how we should parent our children. From the way that we discipline them, the way that we entertain them, the places we take them, the things we do with them, education, school. It's all wrapped up, just like everything else, in this incredibly complex and tremendously rigid web of expectations and societal norms. So, for example, we are expected not to allow our children too much screen time. That's a really big one. We're expected that our children should never shout or make too much noise in public. It is expected that if our child does make a lot of noise in public, that we will tell them off, because noise in public is bad behaviour and therefore must be treated as such. Essentially, parenting an autistic child in a neurotypical-led world is going to cause an innumerable amount of issues. You're going to upset your family. You're going to upset strangers in the street because you're not parenting properly. And the upshot of this is that we feel incredible peer pressure to parent in the standard way, whatever that might be. We feel enormous pressure to meet society's expectations, as autistic people do generally, and that, of course, is why we end up masking. Autistic people mask in part so that we can meet society's expectations and therefore not get a lot of criticism and grief for doing things incorrectly. So it's interesting. It's almost like parents of autistic children end up masking parentally by desperately trying to parent their autistic child in a neurotypical way that simply doesn't work. Or, if it does work, is far from the most efficient and effective way to parent, and could cause all kinds of little traumas and problems as the child grows up. So one of the really important messages that parents of autistic children have to take in and try to internalize is to try to ignore that peer pressure as best as you possibly can, to feel more confident and more certain that the way you wish to parent your autistic child in a way that actually helps them and works for them is valid. No matter what people might think, your method of parenting is valid. So to give the example, I mean, I could give 100,000 examples, but that isn't really what the video's for. This video is for this overview, if you like. So I'm just going to give one example, and I've already mentioned it, the screen time thing. Okay, so societal expectation over here is that screen time will, of course, always be minimized. There are all kinds of ableist, classist assumptions made about screen time. You know, if you let your child have screen time, it's assumed that you are a bad parent, that you are negligent, that you are not taking any notice, and that your child is going to grow up to be a, screen-addled monster that can't deal with anything. That's the assumption that society makes. So when people see you letting your autistic child play on their Switch or tablet or whatever in the coffee shop for half an hour, they're going to be making assumptions. They're going to be grumbling to them. Oh, look at them. Children these days, they can never get off their screens, can they? That's going to be the sort of murmur that's going to be going around. You need to feel confident in yourself as a parent that actually, no, do you know what? My autistic child is monotropic. They like to focus on something in depth for a prolonged period. And some of their interests are electronic and therefore on a screen. So actually, it really suits their brain for me to just let them do whatever it is they're doing, playing Minecraft or whatever it is they're up to on their screen for a prolonged period. That is actually good for them in a way that you in society aren't taking into account because you don't know about it. You've got no idea what monotropism is. Society doesn't. Society doesn't understand autistic people yet. So we end up in this situation where, we have to just be more confident in ourselves. Actually, do you know what? I know what is best for my child. And it just so happens that what is best for my child is different to what society, which for some reason is over here in my mind's eye, society deems acceptable. It's an incredibly difficult space to inhabit. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It's really hard to inhabit that space of not caring what other people think. Because we're hardwired as a species to care what other people think. So, I'm not saying that this is a walk in the park and that this is a dead easy thing to do. It's a challenge. It's difficult to go your own way, as Fleetwood Mac would have said, to forge your own path. But it's necessary. And it comes down to this really interesting dichotomy, I think. You've got to come down to this, ultimate decision. Are you parenting for the benefit of your child, or are you parenting to please the stranger in the street, to please the great auntie who only sees you once every couple of months, to please your own parents, their grandparents, whenever you see them? Who are you actually parenting for? And of course, everybody knows that the answer to that is you're parenting for your child. So that's what we have to try to remind ourselves, that is the ultimate reason that we're doing any of this. And therefore we have to try to ignore the looks and the assumptions and the grumbling and all that sort of thing. And realize that it's incredibly important and tremendously valuable to parent in our own way that suits our own autistic children.